Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. What would you do if your carefully built secret was exposed in one night and your husband handed you divorce papers before you could even explain? How did one quick decision lead to the end of my marriage, my reputation, and the life I thought I controlled? This is how everything unraveled the moment my husband came home early and turned the tables, legally. The kitchen clock showed 6:47 p.m. when I made the decision that would destroy everything. I stood at the granite counter, pretending to review Lila's school newsletter while my heart hammered against my ribs. Elias sat at the breakfast nook, laptop open, responding to work emails with that focused expression I'd grown to resent over our 8 years of marriage. "Honey," I said, forcing my voice to sound casual, "I just realized I forgot to get the special ingredients for Lila's class party tomorrow. The organic coconut flour, and those fancy sprinkles Mrs. Henderson specifically requested." Elias looked up, his brown eyes tired behind wire-rimmed glasses. At 34, he still had the lean build that attracted me in college, but lately, all I saw was a man who came home exhausted, buried himself in work, and barely noticed when I wore the red dress he once loved. "Can't we just get regular flour?" he asked, already knowing my answer. I shook my head, letting frustration creep into my voice. You know how these other mums are. If Lila shows up with store-brand anything, they'll judge. Mrs. Patterson already made that comment about my interesting cupcakes last month. That was a lie. Mrs. Patterson had complimented my baking, but Elias didn't remember these details the way I did. He never remembered the small social dynamics that ruled our suburban neighborhood life. "The specialty store closes at 9, I continued, pulling out my phone to show him the fabricated shopping list I'd prepared hours ago. "It's the only place that carries the organic stuff, and I promised Lila her treats would be perfect." From the living room came the sound of our 7-year-old daughter practicing piano, her small fingers stumbling over the keys of Für Elise. 4-year-old Jamie was building an elaborate Lego castle on the carpet, completely absorbed in his architectural vision. Elias closed his laptop with a sigh. "I can go, but that store is across town. I'll be gone at least an hour and a half with traffic." "Perfect. That was exactly what I needed." "Are you sure? I know you're tired." The concerned wife act came naturally after years of practice. "It's fine, Orlaine. You've had a long day too." He stood, stretching his back. "Maybe order pizza for dinner. I'll grab something on the way back." As he gathered his keys and wallet, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Tessa. "How's Operation Excitement going?" I quickly deleted it before Elias could see. Tessa had been encouraging my friendship with Grant for weeks, insisting that I deserved some happiness after years of what she called Elias's emotional neglect. "Daddy, will you read to me when you get back?" Lila called from the piano bench, her blonde hair falling across her face. "Of course, sweetheart. Practice that piece and I'll listen when I return." Elias kissed my forehead, a perfunctory gesture that once meant everything and now felt like obligation. I watched through the window as his Honda pulled out of the driveway, taillights disappearing around the corner. The moment he was gone, I texted Grant, "All clear. Doors unlocked." Grant Lesson lived 3 houses down in the sprawling subdivision where every home looked nearly identical, except for minor variations in shutters and landscaping. At 38, he was recently divorced, charming in a way that Elias had never been, and paid attention to me in a way that made me feel alive again. We'd started talking over the fence while I gardened, and he worked on his deck. Casual conversations about property values and school districts had gradually shifted to more personal topics. He listened when I complained about feeling invisible in my own marriage. He noticed when I wore a new dress. He made me feel like a woman instead of just a mother and wife going through the motions. "Kids, I'm going to start dinner," I called, though I had no intention of cooking. My hand shook slightly as I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror, smoothing my auburn hair and applying fresh lipstick. The front door opened quietly. Grant stepped inside, and immediately the house felt different, charged with possibility and danger. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice low and appreciative. This was what I'd been missing. When was the last time Elias had looked at me like that? "The kids are occupied," I whispered, leading him toward the stairs. "We have time." But as we reached the landing, my phone rang. Marjorie's name flashed on the screen, Elias's mother, who had an uncanny ability to call at the worst possible moments. I declined the call, my heart racing for all the wrong reasons now. "Everything okay?" Grant asked, his hand on my waist. "Fine," I lied, just as headlights swept across the bedroom window. I froze. Those headlights looked familiar. "That's not Elias," I whispered, more to convince myself than Grant. "He just left 20 minutes ago. The store is 40 minutes away." Grant moved to the window, careful to stay hidden behind the curtain. "Silver Honda." My blood turned to ice. He must have forgotten something. We could hear the garage door opening, the mechanical grinding that usually signaled the end of my day and the beginning of our evening routine. But tonight, it sounded like an alarm. "Bathroom," I hissed, pushing Grant toward the ensuite. "Stay quiet." I frantically smoothed the bedspread, checked my appearance in the dresser mirror, and tried to slow my breathing. The front door opened, and I heard Elias's footsteps on the hardwood floor below. "Orlaine," he called. "Up here," I managed, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. "Just changing clothes." I grabbed a different shirt from the closet and quickly pulled it on, messing up my hair in the process to make it look like I'd actually been changing. Through the bathroom door, I could hear Grant's careful breathing. Elias appeared in the doorway, wallet in hand. "Forgot this. Can't buy anything without it." He paused, studying my face. "You okay? You look flushed." "Just warm. I was rushing around, getting the kids settled." Another lie, delivered with the ease of someone who'd been practicing deception for weeks. "Mum, where's dinner?" Lila's voice drifted up from downstairs. "I'll order pizza in a minute, sweetheart," I called back, grateful for the distraction. Elias moved toward the dresser to grab his sunglasses, and I positioned myself to block his view of the bathroom door. My heart hammered so loudly I was certain he could hear it. "The specialty store definitely has everything on your list?" he asked, checking his phone for the address. "Yes, I called earlier to confirm." The lies were coming easier now, each one building on the last. "Mrs. Henderson was very specific about the brands." He nodded, distracted by a work email notification. This was so typical. Even when he was home, he wasn't really present. How long had I felt like a ghost in my own marriage? "I'll be back by 8:30, he said, kissing my cheek again. "Order extra pizza. I'm starving." I listened to his footsteps retreating down the stairs, the garage door opening and closing again, the Honda pulling out of the driveway for the second time. Only then did I allow myself to breathe. Grant emerged from the bathroom, shaking his head. That was close. Too close, I agreed, but the adrenaline was intoxicating. The risk made everything more intense, more real. He pulled me close, and for a moment, all the guilt and fear disappeared. This was what I'd been craving: passion, attention, the feeling of being desired. Elias and I hadn't been intimate in months. We barely talked beyond logistics and schedules. "Are you sure about this?" Grant asked, though his hands were already in my hair. Instead of answering, I kissed him. For the first time in years, I felt alive. But even as we moved together, part of my mind remained alert, listening for car doors, footsteps, the sound of my carefully constructed life falling apart. Downstairs, Jamie was calling for me, probably needing help with something. Lila had stopped playing piano, and the house felt too quiet. "We should be quick," I whispered. Grant nodded, but I could see his attention drifting. He checked his phone, and I caught a glimpse of messages from other women. The realization stung more than it should have. Was I just another conquest to him? Another bored housewife looking for excitement? Focus, I said, more sharply than intended. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sorry, work stuff. As we lay together afterward, I felt the familiar cocktail of satisfaction and guilt. This was what I'd wanted, what I'd convinced myself I deserved. But the victory felt hollow somehow. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. How did it go? Details. Before I could respond, we heard it, the unmistakable sound of the garage door opening again. Grant bolted upright. I thought you said... He wasn't supposed to be back for an hour, I said, panic rising in my throat. Car doors slammed, multiple car doors. Mom! Lila's voice carried up the stairs. Daddy's home and Grandma's with him. Marjorie. Elias's mother had come with him, the woman who'd never quite approved of me, who watched my every move with suspicious eyes. Grant was already pulling on his clothes. Back door? Through the kitchen. They'll see you. Window. Second floor, Grant, unless you want to break your neck. Footsteps on the stairs. Elias's voice. Orlaine. The store was closed for a family emergency. Mum wanted to stop by and see the kids. I shoved Grant toward the walk-in closet, just as Elias appeared in the doorway, Marjorie right behind him. Oh, Marjorie said, her sharp eyes taking in my disheveled appearance, the unmade bed, the general air of chaos. Were you napping, dear? Just resting, I said, acutely aware that my voice sounded strange. Headache. Elias frowned. You didn't mention a headache before. It just started. I moved toward the bathroom, hoping to create distance between them and the closet. I should check on the kids. I'll do it, Marjorie said firmly. You rest. Elias, maybe you should get your wife some aspirin. As they left the room, I heard Grant's phone buzz from inside the closet. Then again, and again. Please, I prayed, let it be on silent. But luck had already abandoned me for the evening. The next morning brought the kind of suburban sunshine that made everything look perfect from the outside. I stood at the kitchen window, watching Marjorie push Jamie on his swing set while Lila practiced cartwheels on the grass. My mother-in-law had decided to spend the night to help with the children, though I suspected her real motivation was surveillance. Elias sat at the breakfast table, laptop open, pretending to work while stealing glances at me. The tension from last night hung between us like smoke. You seem better this morning, he said carefully. Headache gone? Much better, thank you. I poured coffee with steady hands, proud of how normal I sounded. I think I was just overwhelmed with the party planning. About that, Elias said, and my stomach dropped. The store manager called this morning. Apparently they never carry organic coconut flour. He was confused about your call yesterday. I kept my back to him, buying time while I formulated a response. I must have called the wrong store. There are so many specialty shops now. The sound was non-committal, but I could feel his suspicion growing. My phone buzzed with a text. Without thinking, I glanced at it. A mistake that would haunt me for days. Grant, left my watch at your place. Can I come by later? I deleted it immediately, but not before Elias noticed my reaction. Everything okay? He asked. Just Tessa, she wants to meet for lunch. Another lie, so automatic now that I barely registered the deception. Marjorie appeared at the sliding door, her silver hair perfectly styled despite spending the night on our guest room bed. Orlaine, dear, could I speak with you privately? My pulse quickened. Of course. She led me to the front porch, where we could see Grant's house 3 doors down. His car was in the driveway. Had it been there all night? I couldn't remember. I hope you don't mind my staying over, Marjorie began, her tone deceptively sweet. I was worried about you last night. You seemed so flustered. I told you I had a headache. Yes, you did say that. She paused, studying my face. It's just that Mrs. Chen from across the street mentioned seeing unusual activity in the neighborhood lately. Cars parked in different driveways, that sort of thing. Mrs. Chen. the neighborhood watchdog who noticed everything and reported it to anyone who would listen. People have visitors, I said carefully. It's not unusual. No, of course not. Marjorie's smile didn't reach her eyes, though she specifically mentioned seeing Grant Lesson's car in various driveways at odd hours. You know how people talk. The implication hung in the air between us. I forced myself to meet her gaze, channeling every acting class I'd taken in college. Grant's a realtor, isn't he? I'm sure he shows houses at all hours. I'm sure you're right. But her expression said she wasn't sure at all. When we returned inside, Elias was on the phone with someone from work, his voice tense. I caught fragments of the conversation, something about a project deadline, a client emergency that required immediate attention. He hung up and turned to me with an apologetic expression. I have to go in. The Peterson account is imploding, and they need me to fix the database issues. On Saturday? You know how it is. He gathered his laptop and keys. Mum, would you mind staying with Orlaine and the kids? I might be gone most of the day. Of course, Marjorie said too quickly. As Elias left, I felt trapped. Marjorie settled into the living room with a book, positioning herself where she could see both the front and backyards. Every time I moved, her eyes followed. Around noon, my phone rang. Grant's name appeared on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. When it rang again immediately, Marjorie looked up from her book. Aren't you going to answer that? Probably a spam call, I said, declining it again. But Grant was persistent. The third call came while I was in the laundry room, and I finally answered in a whisper. Stop calling me, I hissed. My mother-in-law is here. I need my watch back, Orlaine. It was my grandfather's. I can't leave it there. I'll look for it and get it back to you later. When later? My ex-wife is picking up my daughter tomorrow, and she gave me that watch. If she sees I'm not wearing it, she'll ask questions. The desperation in his voice made me realize something I'd been trying to ignore. Grant had just as much to lose as I did. Maybe more. I'll figure something out, I said and hung up. I found the watch wedged between the mattress and headboard in the master bedroom. It was beautiful, gold with an intricate face, clearly an antique. As I held it, I felt the weight of what we'd done, what we were risking. Voices from downstairs interrupted my thoughts. Marjorie was talking to someone at the front door. Oh, hello, Grant. How nice to see you. My blood froze. Hi, Mrs. Vesper. I was just wondering if I could borrow some sugar from Orlaine. I'm making cookies for my daughter's visit tomorrow. How thoughtful. I'm sure Orlaine would be happy to help. Orlaine, she called, her voice carrying a note of challenge. I slipped the watch into my pocket and went downstairs, trying to look surprised to see Grant on my doorstep. Sugar, I said, hoping my voice sounded normal. If you have some to spare. His eyes searched mine, and I knew he was really asking about the watch. Of course, come in. As I led him to the kitchen, Marjorie followed, her presence heavy with suspicion. I pulled a bag of sugar from the pantry, and while she was distracted by Jamie running through the room, I slipped Grant the watch along with the sugar. Thank you so much, he said, our fingers brushing briefly. I really appreciate it. Any time, I replied, acutely aware of Marjorie's scrutiny. After Grant left, the house felt different. Marjorie's questions became more pointed, her observations sharper. She commented on how well I knew Grant, how often she'd seen him around the neighborhood, how convenient it was that he lived so close. When Elias returned that evening, exhausted and frustrated from his day at the office, Marjorie pulled him aside for a private conversation. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see his expression growing more troubled as she spoke. That night, as we lay in bed, Elias was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke into the darkness. Orlaine, is there anything you want to tell me? My heart stopped. About what? About anything. About us. About anything. The moment stretched between us, heavy with possibility. I could have confessed everything then, could have thrown myself on his mercy and begged for forgiveness. Instead, I chose the path I'd been walking for weeks. I love you, I said, and even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure if they were true anymore. He didn't say it back. Monday morning brought the first crack in my carefully constructed facade. I was at my desk at the medical billing office, trying to focus on insurance claims, when my coworker Jennifer approached with an odd expression. "Hey, Orlaine," she said, perching on the edge of my desk. "My neighbor lives in your subdivision. Maple Grove, right?" "Yes," I said slowly, not liking where this was heading. She mentioned some interesting neighborhood drama. Something about a certain realtor making house calls at unusual hours. The blood drained from my face. I wouldn't know anything about that. Jennifer's smile was sharp. "Of course not. I just thought it was funny how small the world is." Anyway, she said the wives in the neighborhood are all buzzing about it. You know how these suburban gossip mills work. She walked away, leaving me staring at my computer screen without seeing it. If Jennifer's neighbor knew, how many others were talking? How long before the whispers reached Elias? I tried to focus on work, but my phone kept buzzing with texts from Tessa. "Heard through the grapevine that you're the talk of Maple Grove. Mum says Mrs. Patterson asked if you and Elias were having problems. Call me, need details." Each message made my anxiety spike higher. I stepped outside for lunch and called Tessa back. "What exactly are people saying?" I demanded. "Oh, you know how it is. Someone saw Grant's car at your place. Someone else noticed you two talking over the fence a lot. Put two and two together, and suddenly everyone's a detective. This is a disaster, Tessa. Relax. So what if people are talking? You're not the first woman to have a little fun on the side. Remember when Sarah Mitchell had that thing with her tennis instructor? Everyone forgot about it in 6 months. But Sarah Mitchell had gotten divorced. Her husband had taken the kids and moved to another state. I didn't want to become another cautionary tale whispered about at school pickup. When I got home that afternoon, Lila was waiting for me with tears in her eyes. "Mummy, why did Madison's mum ask me if you and Daddy were getting divorced?" My heart shattered. "What did you tell her?" I said no, but she said her mum heard you were friends with Mr. Grant, and that sometimes friends can cause problems for families. I knelt down and pulled my daughter close, inhaling the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Daddy and I are fine, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups gossip about things they don't understand." But even as I comforted her, I could see the confusion in her eyes. Children were more perceptive than adults gave them credit for. She'd sensed the tension between Elias and me, the way we moved around each other like strangers sharing a house. That evening, Elias came home later than usual. He'd been working longer hours lately, and I wondered if it was really about work or if he was avoiding being home with me. "We need to talk," he said, setting down his briefcase with unusual force. "About what?" "About the fact that my mother isn't the only one who's noticed changes around here. About the fact that 3 different people asked me today if everything was okay at home. About the fact that my wife has been acting like a stranger for weeks." I felt cornered, desperate. "I don't know what you want me to say, Elias. I've been stressed with work and the kids and Grant Lesson?" The name hung in the air between us like an accusation. I forced myself to meet his eyes. "Grant is our neighbor. We talk occasionally. That's all." "Is it?" His voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. "Because Mrs. Chen mentioned seeing his car here when I wasn't home. Because my mother said you seemed nervous when he came by for sugar. Because everyone in this neighborhood apparently knows something I don't. You're being paranoid." The words were out before I could stop them, and I saw him flinch as if I'd slapped him. "Am I?" he asked. "Or am I finally paying attention?" That night, he slept in the guest room for the first time in our marriage. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me, wondering how everything had spiraled so far out of control. The next day brought worse news. I was grocery shopping when I ran into Mrs. Patterson in the cereal aisle. Her smile was saccharine and predatory. "Orlaine, how are you holding up, dear?" "Fine, thank you." I tried to move past her, but she stepped into my path. "I just want you to know that if you need someone to talk to during this difficult time, I'm here. Divorce is so hard on the children. I'm not getting divorced. Oh, she looked genuinely surprised. I just assumed with all the talk about you and that handsome neighbor of yours. Well, these things usually end one way. I abandoned my cart and left the store, my hands shaking as I drove home. The walls were closing in, and I didn't know how to stop it. When I pulled into my driveway, Grant was waiting by my front door, in broad daylight, where anyone could see. "We need to talk," he said. "Not here, not now." "My ex-wife knows, Orlaine. Someone told her about us. She's threatening to take my daughter away permanently if I don't get my act together. That's not my problem." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was in survival mode now. Grant's face hardened. "Actually, it is your problem, because I'm not going down alone." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means maybe it's time your husband knew the truth. Maybe it's time everyone knew the truth." He walked away, leaving me standing in my driveway, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. That evening, Elias came home with an envelope in his hand. His face was grim, resolved. "What's that?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Receipts," he said simply. "From the store you claimed to call about organic coconut flour. From the night you sent me on that wild goose chase. Turns out they keep records of customer inquiries. Funny thing, you never called them." The envelope felt heavy in my hands, heavier than it should have been for a few pieces of paper. "Elias, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you lied to get me out of the house? Can you explain why Grant Lesson's car was parked 2 blocks away that night, caught on the Martinez family's security camera? Can you explain why you've been deleting text messages and acting like a stranger in your own home?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. The careful structure of lies I'd built was crumbling, and I couldn't find the pieces fast enough to rebuild it. "I thought so," Elias said quietly. "I'll be staying at my mother's tonight. We'll talk when you're ready to tell the truth." He left me standing in the kitchen, holding evidence of my own deception, finally understanding that some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. The house felt enormous and empty without Elias. I wandered from room to room like a ghost, unable to settle anywhere. The kids kept asking where Daddy was, and I ran out of excuses by Wednesday. "Is Daddy mad at us?" Jamie asked during breakfast, his 4-year-old eyes wide with confusion. "No, baby. Daddy's not mad at you. He's just working through some things." Lila, sharper than her brother, studied my face. "Are you and Daddy fighting?" "Sometimes grown-ups need space to think," I said, hating how hollow the words sounded. I'd called in sick to work, unable to face Jennifer's knowing looks and whispered conversations. Instead, I spent my days cleaning obsessively, as if scrubbing the house could somehow scrub away what I'd done. Tessa came by Thursday afternoon, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago. "You look terrible," she announced, settling onto the couch with her usual lack of tact. "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear." "I'm serious, Orlaine. When's the last time you showered? Or ate something besides coffee?" I couldn't remember. The days had blurred together into a haze of anxiety and regret. "Everyone's talking," Tessa continued. "Mom heard from Mrs. Rodriguez that Elias moved out. Is it true? He's staying at his mother's temporarily. Because of Grant?" I nodded, unable to say it out loud. Tessa sighed. "Look, I know I encouraged you to live a little, but I didn't think you'd blow up your entire life. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking my husband barely noticed I existed. I was thinking I deserved to feel wanted. I was thinking—" I stopped, realizing how pathetic I sounded. "You were thinking with everything except your brain," Tessa said bluntly. "Now, what are you going to do about it?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender's name made my stomach drop. Elias. Subject line, "Please see attached." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a detailed timeline of the past 2 months, documenting every suspicious moment, every lie, every piece of evidence he'd quietly gathered while I thought I was being clever. Date: March 15th. Orlaine claims headache, goes to bed early. Grant Lesson's car observed parked on Elm Street, 2 blocks away, at 9:47 p.m. Security footage from Martinez residence shows figure walking from Elm Street toward our house at 9:52 p.m. Date: March 22nd. Orlaine sends me to specialty store for urgent baking supplies. Store manager confirms no customer inquiry was made that day. Neighbor's doorbell camera captures Grant's car in our driveway from 7:15 to 8:43 p.m. Date: March 29th. Orlaine deletes text messages while I'm in the room. Phone records show 47 deleted messages, 2 sent from Grant Lesson in past month. Children mention Mr. Grant visiting when Daddy is at work. The list went on for 3 pages, each entry more damning than the last. At the bottom was a note. Orlaine, I've tried to give you opportunities to tell me the truth. Since you've chosen deception, I'm moving forward with protecting myself and our children. My attorney will contact you Monday. E. Oh God, I whispered, dropping the phone like it was on fire. What? Tessa leaned over to read the screen, her face paling as she scrolled through the timeline. Jesus, Orlaine, he's been building a case against you. He can't do this. He can't just decide our marriage is over without even talking to me. Actually, he can, especially with evidence like this. Tessa was quiet for a long moment. You need a lawyer. I need my husband back. That ship has sailed, honey. Now you need to focus on damage control. But it was too late for damage control. The next morning, I woke to find Grant's house empty, a for sale sign planted in his front yard. He was gone without a word, leaving me to face the wreckage alone. The neighbors weren't even pretending to hide their stares anymore. Mrs. Chen waved from her garden with a smug smile. Mrs. Patterson made a point of walking past my house twice during her morning jog, slowing down to peer through the windows. At the grocery store, conversation stopped when I entered aisles. At the gas station, the clerk who'd known me for years suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. I'd become the neighborhood scandal, the cautionary tale mothers would whisper to their daughters. Saturday morning brought the sound of a car in my driveway. For a moment, my heart leaped, thinking Elias had come home. Instead, I saw Marjorie's silver Buick, and my stomach sank. She knocked once before using her key. When had Elias given her a key? Orlaine, dear, we need to talk. She settled at my kitchen table like she owned the place, her handbag positioned precisely in front of her. Elias asked me to collect some of his things, and to give you this. She handed me a thick envelope with my name written in Elias's careful handwriting. What is it? Open it. Inside were legal documents, formal notice of separation proceedings, custody arrangements, financial disclosures. The language was cold, clinical, reducing 8 years of marriage to a series of legal terms and conditions. He's serious about this, I said, more to myself than to Marjorie. Did you think he wasn't? Did you think he'd just forgive and forget while you carried on with that man? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen, Orlaine? What did you think the endgame was? I didn't have an answer. I'd been living moment to moment, lie to lie, without considering the consequences. For what it's worth, Marjorie said, standing to leave, I tried to warn you. I tried to give you chances to come clean, but you chose to keep digging. After she left, I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by the debris of my choices. The legal papers spelled out a future I'd never imagined. Shared custody, divided assets, a life split in 2. I thought about calling Elias, begging him to reconsider. But what could I say? That I was sorry? That I'd made a mistake? The evidence was too overwhelming, the betrayal too complete. Instead, I called the number on the legal documents, Elias's attorney. It was time to face the music. The law office of Peterson, Williams and Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and intimidating views of the city below. I sat in the waiting area, my palms sweating as I clutched my purse, trying to prepare for what was coming. I'd hired my own attorney, Rebecca Santos, a sharp-eyed woman who'd listened to my story with professional detachment before delivering the brutal truth. I had no leverage, no moral high ground, and very few options. "Your husband has been thorough," she'd said, reviewing the evidence. Phone records, security footage, witness statements, documented lies. This isn't just infidelity, it's a pattern of deception that any judge will take seriously. Now, facing the formal settlement conference, I felt like I was walking to my own execution. The conference room was sterile and cold, with a long mahogany table that seemed designed to emphasize the distance between warring parties. Elias sat on the far side with his attorney, David Peterson, a man whose reputation for ruthless efficiency was legendary in our city. Elias looked different, thinner, more tired, but also somehow stronger. He wore a dark suit I'd never seen before and kept his eyes fixed on the papers in front of him, refusing to meet my gaze. "Before we begin," Peterson said, his voice crisp and professional, "I want to establish the timeline of events that brought us here." He opened a thick folder and began laying out photographs, documents, and printouts like evidence at a crime scene. Security camera footage showing Grant's car. Phone records highlighting deleted messages. Receipts proving my lies about the grocery store. "Mrs. Vesper," Peterson continued, "do you dispute any of these facts?" My attorney squeezed my arm in warning, but I couldn't help myself. "It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. I never meant for it to go this far." "But it did go this far," Peterson replied smoothly. "Your actions have caused significant emotional distress to your husband and children, damaged your family's reputation in the community, and violated the fundamental trust that marriage requires." "I understand that, but do you?" Elias spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but cutting. "Do you understand that Lila cried herself to sleep last night asking if Mommy and Daddy were going to live in different houses forever? Do you understand that Jamie keeps asking when I'm coming home, and I don't know what to tell him?" The pain in his voice broke something inside me. "Elias, please. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can't." He finally looked at me, and I saw no anger in his eyes, just exhaustion and disappointment. "Because I can't trust you anymore. I can't trust that when you say you're going to the store, you're actually going to the store. I can't trust that when you delete text messages, it's because they're spam. I can't trust that when you tell me you love me, you mean it." "I do love you. You have a strange way of showing it." Peterson cleared his throat. "Let's move to the settlement terms. Mr. Vesper is proposing a 50-50 custody arrangement, with the children spending alternating weeks with each parent. He's willing to maintain the family home for stability, with Mrs. Vesper relocating to suitable housing nearby." "What about spousal support?" my attorney asked. "Given the circumstances that led to the separation, Mr. Vesper feels that temporary support during the transition period is more than generous. Mrs. Vesper has a full-time job and is capable of supporting herself." I felt the walls closing in. "You're punishing me financially because of a mistake." "I'm protecting myself and our children from further manipulation," Elias said calmly. "The same way I protected myself by documenting everything over the past month, instead of confronting you with accusations you would have denied." The realization hit me like a physical blow. "You've been planning this for weeks." "I've been hoping you'd tell me the truth for weeks. When it became clear that wasn't going to happen, yes, I started protecting myself legally." Peterson pulled out another document. "There's also the matter of the non-disclosure agreement." "What non-disclosure agreement?" I asked. "Mr. Vesper is willing to keep the specific details of your infidelity private, protecting your reputation and professional standing. In exchange, you agree not to make any public statements about this divorce that could be construed as defamatory." My attorney leaned forward. "That's hardly necessary, isn't it?" Peterson smiled coldly. "Mrs. Vesper has already demonstrated a willingness to manipulate the truth. This protects both parties from future misunderstandings. I stared at the papers in front of me, each clause another nail in the coffin of my marriage. What if I don't sign? Then we go to trial, Peterson said simply, where all of this evidence becomes public record, where your children's friends' parents can read the court transcripts online, where your employer might take an interest in your pattern of deception and poor judgment. The threat was clear: sign the papers and slink away quietly, or face public humiliation that would follow me for years. I need time to think. You have until Monday, Peterson said, gathering his documents. After that, we file for contested divorce and let the courts decide. As the meeting broke up, I tried one last time to reach Elias. Can we talk privately? Just for a minute? He paused at the conference room door, his hand on the handle. For a moment, I thought he might agree. There's nothing left to say, Orlaine. You made your choice when you decided to lie to me every day for 2 months. You made your choice when you sent me out of my own house so you could betray our marriage in our bedroom. You made your choice when you looked me in the eye and told me I was being paranoid. I was scared. You were selfish. His voice was steady, final. And now we both have to live with the consequences. He left me standing in that sterile conference room, surrounded by the legal debris of 8 years of marriage, finally understanding that some betrayals were unforgivable. That weekend, I signed the papers. Monday morning, I watched from my bedroom window as a moving truck pulled into the driveway. Elias was coming to collect his belongings, to officially divide our life into his and hers. The children were at school, spared from witnessing the final dissolution of their family. I'd already started packing my own things, preparing to move into a small apartment across town where I could start over as a single mother. A cautionary tale, a woman who'd gambled everything on a moment of passion and lost. As I folded clothes into boxes, I found the red dress, the one Elias used to love, the one I'd worn the night I decided to pursue Grant. I held it for a long moment, remembering the woman I used to be before I became someone I didn't recognize. The doorbell rang. Elias stood on the porch with 2 moving men, his expression businesslike and distant. "I'll just get my things and go," he said. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As they loaded furniture and boxes into the truck, I retreated to the kitchen, unable to watch my marriage being dismantled piece by piece. When they finished, Elias appeared in the doorway one last time. "The kids will be staying with me this week," he said. "You can pick them up Friday for your first weekend." "Okay." "Orlaine." He paused, and for a moment, I heard an echo of the man I'd married. "I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for." Then he was gone, and I was alone in a house that no longer felt like home, surrounded by the wreckage of choices I couldn't undo. 6 months later, I ran into Grant at a coffee shop downtown. He was with a young blonde woman, laughing at something she'd said, his hand possessive on her waist. He saw me and nodded politely, like I was a casual acquaintance, instead of the woman who'd destroyed her marriage for him. The woman he was with looked at me with mild curiosity, probably wondering who I was and why her boyfriend seemed uncomfortable. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. He'd never promised me anything beyond a few stolen afternoons. He'd never asked me to lie to my husband or risk my family. Those choices had been mine alone. As I watched him walk away with his new conquest, I finally understood the truth I'd been avoiding. I hadn't destroyed my marriage for Grant Lesson. I'd destroyed it because I was too cowardly to face the real problems in my life, too selfish to consider anyone's needs but my own, and too proud to admit I needed help. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in October. I signed the final papers in the same conference room where it had all begun, with the same sterile view of the city below. Elias wasn't there. He'd already signed his copy and moved on with his life. I heard through mutual friends that he was dating someone new, a teacher at Lila's school, who made him smile again. I drove home to my small apartment, where I lived alone with my regrets and the bitter knowledge that some mistakes can never be undone. The children adjusted better than I'd expected, splitting their time between their father's house and my cramped 2-bedroom rental. But sometimes, late at night when they were asleep, I'd think about the red dress still hanging in my closet, and the woman who'd been foolish enough to believe that passion was more important than promises, that excitement was worth more than trust, that a moment of feeling alive was worth destroying everything that actually mattered. I'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that some prices are too high to pay, and some choices can never be taken back.